Yeah, I'm Miles. I'm from Narcovery, and I am so excited to have Surya Nycle here with me. Say hi.
Hi.
Surya is a writer, is an author, and you can follow her on her Instagram and Facebook. You want to give people an idea where to find you?
Yes, on all platforms, it's Surya, Surya, Nicole, Nycole.
You've had your own experiences with narcissism, and you also inspire and help other people heal. So, like, what's your big drive to helping make the world better?
A part of it is I feel like I don't have a choice because of my core. I just want to heal and I want other people to heal and be happy. I want to
Mhm.
ride the rainbow, the unicorn, with everybody. Because it sucks to be hurting. And I believe that if we work on our healing, that that's also going to then affect the next generation. And so the more work that we do with ourselves, then we're not going to then hurt somebody or traumatize somebody else. But then we can also be aware to not engage in additional traumatic experiences going forward.
Well, I know we were just chatting before this call. We were kind of talking about how a lot of people don't even realize they're in an abusive relationship or in a toxic relationship when they're actually in it. And then the excuses that we make and the what if, the if only I
Right.
had anticipated the needs better, if only I had made the coffee better, if only I'd been neater, if only, and we kind of look back
Right.
at it after the fact. And you can see how that was just kind of part of the trap. It was part of that mind melt that seems to happen with toxic people. They seem to just kind of suck us in. And then once we get sucked
Right.
into that world, it's like we live in our world. One of the analogies they use is kind of like, it's like Alice in Wonderland. It's like it starts off with this
Yeah.
cute little rabbit. And it's like he's holding a watch. He seems interesting. He's got somewhere to go. And before you know it, and you're in this upside down world where sometimes you're big, sometimes you're small. And there's somebody running around on an axe wants to rip your head off. And just every so often, it's just like the world doesn't actually make sense. When you're on the
At
other side
all.
of it, when you come out of the hole and you look back,
Right.
the hell was I thinking? And
Right.
even when you're in the hole, you're like, oh, if only I could make this world make sense. This is not reality. It's not my reality.
And nothing you do is ever going to make it make sense either. And I think that a lot of times with our minds doing that, the what if thing is we are trying to correct or fix what's going on so that we can be at peace or so that we can move forward. We don't realize that there's actually not even an opportunity or possibility for that. So even though you keep trying, there really is nothing. Like you can literally exhaust every single option and there is nothing that is going to change that. Not even that you need to change, but it's the other person who needs to work on themselves.
Well, I think that even that analogy we were talking about, like the Alice in Wonderland, where you just kind of wake up in this world and
Mm-hmm.
things are upside down and backwards and nothing is making
Yeah,
sense. Our brains are still trying to make sense of things that don't make sense. And you can
true.
understand how someone else's insane world that we just kind of got sucked into can warp
Mm-hmm.
your own reality. That's blue and that's orange. And you're like, no, it's not.
Yes.
And then after a
Yes.
while, it's just like, okay, it's blue, it's orange, like whatever. And then
It's
you say
like
it's blue and orange, and
psychological
then they say, no,
warfare.
it's purple and orange, you dumbass.
Yeah,
And it's just like, well,
right.
it's like, oh, wait a second. This is just a freaking power play, isn't it? But we don't actually see it. We're trying to actually make sense of it.
Yeah. But it's like psychological warfare. I mean, it really is because it's a mind fuck, because it's a constant like twist of like what your reality is because they don't actually live in reality and the lie to themselves, even though they don't see it as a lie, right?
Mhm.
Even just with colors. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, fine, that's what colors you think it is. And even though you're kind of accepting it just to keep the peace, then you kind of start like more and more of these kind of things happen in a pattern. And then you don't even realize the pattern. And you're like, well, maybe I am seeing things incorrectly. Maybe it is me.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you are the problem.
Yeah. But here's the whole thing. The way they use words and the way they twist reality, and it's the whole thing about keeping us off balance, right? And
Right.
it's like they have all these tactics that they use, the gaslight, which is exactly what we're talking about, like just changing history, changing reality. And then there's the projection. It's just like you look mad. It's like I'm not actually mad, but
Yes.
you're mad, and you want me to be mad. So it just kind of shows the one. It's just emotional immaturity. It's like I'm feeling
Mm-hmm.
mad. I don't know how to process it. I'm going to make you mad, watch you process it, and that's going to make me feel better. So I'm going to take all these toxic emotions and just give them to somebody else, especially someone empathetic. Just like, yes, we can take emotions.
Right.
We love emotions because that makes us feel useful because we can be around people. And so they're like,
Right.
perfect. I have all these emotions I don't want to do with. And the lie that we tell ourselves is one day when they're healed, when they're fixed, they'll come and help me unpack all this crap that they just dumped on me, and that they never.
Yeah. Yeah. Or that everything's going to be okay. Even if that did happen, that they became heal, they got healing and they got better. Now you have got such significant trauma
Mhm.
that they're not even emotionally mature enough to even handle that. And on top of it, by them being able to help you with that would mean that they would have to accept that they're the ones who traumatized you.
But they don't
And
actually
that's,
see it as traumatizing you. They're just being themselves. They're watching you fall
yeah,
apart. And they're like,
And it's
oh
your
yeah,
fault that you feel that way.
yeah, there is
There's
something
nothing
wrong
wrong
with
with
me.
me.
There is something wrong with me. I'm in a relationship with you for way longer than I needed to be. It's just like,
Right,
it's not
right.
like the signs weren't there. I just chose not to see them. And then when
Yeah.
they were there, I still made excuses.
Well,
And
because some of it is really hard to see, man. Like when you start to really realize that you have been manipulated and like all of these things that are happening to you by somebody that you love and thought wanted to get help, because a lot of times they will say, oh, I'm going to go get help, but that only lasts for, a day or two or a week. There's no consistency in it. Like they really would do this to me. It's not just somebody coming off the street and robbing you. This is somebody who's like conditioned you to believe like they're not a bad person. You are a bad person at this point,
mhm,
and for me, I started to realize like, for the
mhm.
most part, the reason for the enjoyable moment or activity was to further the manipulation later on. It's almost like depositing money in the bank
Yeah,
for
yeah.
later, because if we're going to be in a good mood and everything's going great, then I'm going to be completely blindsided by what's happening next, or maybe even not paying attention to the cheating or the manipulation that's happening. And so one
Mhm,
of the things that I did was I was like, I had a mental funeral for the person that I loved. That's the person I loved, but he wasn't there. But I need to grieve this, because
mhm.
you get to a point in your healing where you're like, how do I process this, digest this, learn, like untangle and unpack all of this? They're still alive. You know what? I'm gonna have a mental funeral with them. And then mentally I will go visit their grave.
That's a really neat way to just kind of compartmentalize everything. Even in that conversation that you just said, all of a sudden it's just like, oh yeah, they weren't who I thought they were, so I'm gonna go mourn them. But then you aren't who you thought you were either. So then it also becomes, oh, I actually have to mourn the loss of that dysfunctional part of me. Because it's our thinking brain that got us into trouble, right? Because we were trying to make sense of things that weren't making sense. And that was slowly driving us insane. The ground kept shifting, right? It's just like just a little, and then it would just be earthquakes every so often. And then the narcissistic rage would come out and it's like, I must have really did something wrong. It's like, you
Right.
raging about breakfast like doesn't justify that action.
That's true. And I think it's very valid to say that while our minds are in these situations where, like we really don't realize how much we're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So we don't really realize what's actually going on. Then you can come to like maybe the next conclusion of like, okay, what do I need to do? Do I break up with this person? But at the same token, it's so hard to know when you're in manipulation, because had the person come up to you and said, I'm going to do all of these things to you, will you accept them?
Yeah.
However, if they play all these games and they do the nice things, then the little bit of the bad thing, nice thing, a lot of the bit of the bad thing, you know what I mean? Like all the push and pull, when you admit that you've got a problem, then now I'm like, okay, I can be here for you. I'll walk with you through that. But then it becomes again a part of the manipulation, because then in a week or two, then it is right back to like ground zero.
Well, here's the thing. When we meet a toxic person, and it's just like we all come in with our own baggage. Like no
Oh,
one's
for
perfect.
sure.
The one analogy that's kind of really interesting is just imagine if you went into a casino and you had a couple $100 because you've got some kind of emotional reserves, and then you sit down at one of the slot machines and you start putting in quarters, and then all of a sudden every third pull you're just like you won the lottery. It's like, oh my God, this is my favorite machine. I can't believe how this machine makes me feel so good. And it's just like
Right.
narcissism is like that, because it's just like you're
Yeah.
with them and they make you feel so good, and you pull the lever again. It's like more money, more money, more money, and they fill you up all towards the top. And then all of a sudden you're like pulling and you're like, I'm not winning as often. And then you're like
Yeah.
starting to take all of the stuff that they built you up with, and you're starting to use the coins that you thought you had, and you're burning through those. And then eventually you're broke. And the
Yes.
machine is just like, the hell.
How can you be broke?
Yeah. And it might be all right, I'll give you 3/4, because at that point it just becomes it's
Like
breadcrumb.
the breadcrumbing. Right.
Yeah, a lot of that it
Yeah.
can create cognitive dissonance. But even in our brain, if you want to just talk about like the addiction, you go from dopamine because they make you feel so good. They make you feel like you just won the love lottery, but they can't do that. Takes work, right? That takes energy. That takes work for them. It's like they have to mirror you all the time, and so eventually
Yeah.
it's just like there's cracks. The cortisol starts to click out. More cortisol, and they're angrier, angry. And the
Yeah.
relationship goes from 90% dopamine to 10% cortisol to 50-50 to 90% cortisol, and trying to live off of the scraps of emotional energy. And then once we
Right.
separate from these people, what makes toxic relationships so dangerous is the big highs and the big lows. If there weren't the big
Hmm.
highs, there wouldn't be the big lows. A normal relationship should have more of a
Right.
even flow. But these ones,
Right.
just like the hell, and like no wonder you're unsettled. you walk in the door and it's just like, I don't know who I'm going to deal with today. Is it going to be Dr. Jekyll? Is it going to be Mr. Hyde? Is it like, which one?
Right. And
It's
because
like, oh,
there's no
great.
consistency.
It's Mr. Hyde. Great. Oh, I can deal with Mr. Hyde. And then all of a sudden it turns to Dr. Jekyll. And then it's just like, oh, I can deal with Dr. Jekyll. I know exactly.
Yeah.
I got all my tools. I got all my tools. And then you realize you're wearing two hats. Yeah.
And you've lost yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. You've split yourself up into two. And it's just like,
Yeah.
I'm useless. I'm amazing.
Yeah. And that's why it takes so long to heal, like for one, to get out of those relationships, but then also to heal from them. It does take a significant amount of time, and it's work and effort, you know, like going to therapy and constant effort with yourself, you know, because these triggers are going to come up when you're not in therapy. And then also making sure that you are now starting to feed and take care of yourself and to start to do those things that you used to do and that you used to love, even if that could be going for a walk or doing art. There's been so much change in your brain as to where your focus should be at that you don't even know yourself anymore. Like you don't even recognize yourself. And I felt like for me, I was fighting to stay to be myself while trying to manage everything else. And, you know, so I am grateful to a point for that because I was still trying to stay me. I mean, it's not a normal breakup is what I'm saying. It's a lot more than that. Like you're literally psychologically and most of the time physically abused. And so you have to heal from that trauma.
Yeah, here's a cure for a regular breakup. It's 6 pints of Haagen-Dazs, 2 bottles of wine, a bunch of sad movies, you know, 72 hours, and then you're moved on with your life, right?
Right.
With these relationships, because they tend to be that enmeshment that happens, it's like there's a healthy relationship where it's just like you're a person, they're a person. There's always going to be codependence. Even when you're dating somebody, it's just like, oh, we have to, you know,
work together.
We have
to depend on each other.
We have to work on clean. There's going to be codependency. There's going to be a little bit,
right?
But you're not one person, right? It's almost like two half people that kind of get together to form one whole. And one of the analogies I like to use is just like, you know, you find the narcissist, they're completely unchanging, right? And you're a normal person when you meet. And then slowly over time, it's just like they wear you down. They lower your boundaries. And
they do. And that's because I would agree with your analogy about like, you know, the two halves. Yeah. But I do notice that they do come for people that have, like, say, their life together. So I do find that a lot of times they're not always looking for somebody to fill a void with, but those who have their life together and that they then break them down, like kind of chip away at them. Now, this person who was whole is now half. I'm going to break you down to make you believe that you are nothing without me. I find that who they cheat with are those who are looking to fill a void. So it's like, even if you think you've got it all together, which, you know, like we're constantly healing and growing, right? But even if you think you've got it all together, a narcissist can still come for you and still tear you down, you know?
And here's the weird thing. If you want to know where your vulnerabilities are, it's just like, yeah, you can go to a therapist and it can take years and you can figure all that stuff out. Or you can spend 12 minutes with a narcissist and they'll automatically, instinctively tear you down to your very core. And then you're like, oh, okay, now I know what to work on. And then you work on that.
Right.
And then they attack you again. It's like, oh, I'm going to strengthen that broken part of me. I'm going to fix that. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, there's no more kinks in the armor at that point.
And sometimes the way they do it too, like I was telling you before about like how they paint their red flags green, like they know they have red flags. I 100% believe that, but they paint them green because they don't want anybody to realize hurting inside, and they're very hurtful people. And so while they're in the process of tearing you down, they do it in such a way that it's not like, oh, you're so insecure. It's, oh, I really don't like that shade of lipstick on you. The tone and the manner and the way of which they do it is so much different than just a blatant, obvious way. And so that's what I mean by like painting the red flags green, because this is odd. Like and then I would, and for me, I'm a communicator. I want to understand because I want to give the person the benefit of the doubt. It's their life, their choices. Like, then I talk to them and they make it green. And it does make sense with everything that they're saying, although everything that they're saying is actually not the truth. It's just the green paint going over the red flag.
Yeah. There are no red flags. Like, I had an affair because you didn't give me enough attention. Really? That's your excuse for the affair.
Right. Yeah. Or the boohoo, like the feeling sorry for them. And like one of the things I definitely recognized afterwards, he hated me crying after the abuse I experienced. He saw me as using my tears as manipulation because he would cry to manipulate me. So when I would cry, even though I was like actually crying for real reason, he saw that as manipulation, and that's why my tears would make him angry, because that's all he knew of himself, is that he cried for manipulating me.
They also see it as a sign of weakness, right? They tear people down, and then when they tear them down, it's just like,
you're supposed to still be a pillar. Like you're supposed to still.
I built you up. I put you on a pedestal. I elevated you to worship status. I made you feel like a goddess. what they want to do is recreate that dysfunctional relationship with their mom, so that they lift you up. And in that
Yeah.
process, it's just like we get validated. It is a drug. That's
But you
dope.
just never know when it's going to stop,
Yeah.
right? And like by the time you're sucked in,
Yeah.
then it stops.
Yeah. And then their goal is to tear you down. And they don't actually feel good until they see you like sniveling on a pile of snot. And for them, there's that little power moment. First off, narcissists don't target weak people. They target
No.
emotionally strong people, people who are resilient, people that are successful, people that got their stuff together, right? They need a challenge. So if you've been targeted by a narcissist, congratulations. Congratulations. You're strong.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Congratulations. You too.
Congratulations. Way to go. No, you were like way more powerful than them, partly because you had emotional strength that they never had and they can't have. So in order to make themselves feel better about that hole that they have, it's just like, I'm going to take something pretty and take something beautiful and take something pure and honest. And I'm going to destroy it, crush it. And then I'm going to say, see, that emotion stuff, that doesn't work, does it? See, empathy, compassion.
Right.
It makes you fall apart. But here's also a secret towards recovery. We give our empathy away in order to get validation in return. In the healing process, what we end up doing is start setting boundaries. The same empathy that got us stuck and hooked, it is that fishing hook, that hook. As soon as we take it from being outward and turning it inwards, almost having a mirror and reflecting it back on ourselves, then all of a sudden we actually heal much quicker. And we actually build resilience, because the only thing a narcissist is going to do is pick another victim.
The only thing they got better at is lying and manipulating. That's it. Unless they actually take that self-exploration time, which is going to be years in therapy and work, into another relationship. Oh, I did my 72-hour eating ice cream and sitting on the couch, right? It's no.
Yeah. Well, quite often they'll target their next victim before the existing victim is even used up. And then the classic triangulations, like, this is my new girlfriend, it's my old girlfriend. I want them to fight over me. Oh man, when I hear those stories, I'm just like, oh, geez.
Yeah, the child, right? And like, it's just dealing with that child mentality, and like that's literally what a child or a high schooler would think is, oh, they're fighting over. I mean,
But it is like, you are talking about somebody with emotional maturity of a child, right? And that is exactly something like an 11-year-old or 12-year-old in the schoolyard would do. It's just like, oh, Billy likes me, Joy likes me, Janet likes me, he likes me more. Do you like me more? You remember that little note where it's just like, do you like me? Yes or no?
For sure.
So what's been the biggest source of inspiration you find just day to day?
I guess focusing on my why, which is really my son. I don't want to inflict trauma on him, and I want to build him to still be the kind, loving soul that he is, but to be aware and to have boundaries. When a red flag comes up, even if you have been love bombed, that boundary is more firm in your heart, and that his boundary means more to him than, sacrificing literally like your life. That's my daily thing is that it's just my mindset, keeping my mind focused on what is truly important in my life. Then everything else kind of comes after that, because if I'm focused on keeping him safe and teaching him properly, then I'm also going to stay focused on my healing and my recovery, and constantly just, looking at all of the people who are on the side of healing and not on the side of continuing to traumatize people, things like that, just like even all of your videos, that helps me to see that I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who has seen these behaviors happen. I'm not crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like,
actually, I have the absolute opposite of sanity versus insanity. I think narcissists think they're sane, right? It's like, it's just empaths, we question our own sanity, because if we didn't, we'd still be in a narcissistic relationship. But our ability to question sanity means that not only can we question it in somebody else, question it in ourselves. One of the biggest questions I get is like, people call up and think, I think I'm the narcissist. I'm like, what makes you think that?
Yeah.
But it's interesting that the same part is like, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But that question, whereas you ask a narcissist, it's just like, it's not my fault. It's just like, they didn't cuddle me enough in the morning, and I really didn't like the way they make their socks. But this new girlfriend, she's an extra good cuddler, and you should see how she cleans my socks. So
right. She's perfect.
Until she's not. Until she's like, oh, I can't believe your feet smell so bad. Oh, you breathe too loud in your sleep. I'm finding a new girlfriend.
Right. Don't be human. Don't be. Don't be at all.
But I do love your posts, and even that what I really get from your messages is just the amount of just that raw love that you have, that you just kind of express to people, because there's a loneliness to the recovery process. There's a
Mm,
whole thing about it. Nobody understands. Like, you can't explain it to your parents. It's like lots of people get divorced. Yeah, lots of people get divorced, but and that love, it just seems to come from a very genuine place. So it's like, how do you nurture your own heart? Because at some point in the recovery process, what we end up doing is we end up being our own saviors. Because if we're sitting around
right.
waiting for a savior to come, it's like, it's not coming. You have to step up and put on your big boy pants or big girl pants, and you just kind of have to say, all right, they broke me, absolutely, they broke me,
Yeah,
and they should fix me. Sure, they should.
right.
They're going to. So who's
No.
left?
When like I'm a problem solver and I was with a problem maker.
That
Right.
was a perfect relationship. Why is it over? I don't get it. They had
Wait,
problems, you solved them. It's
I know.
perfect. This sounds heavenly.
They didn't want the problem solved apparently. They
Yeah.
kept making more problems. You know what I
But
mean?
then
So
you
it's
had a
like,
problem, which was them, and you couldn't solve
true.
that.
I
So I think
couldn't
that's
solve
where the
it.
dynamic falls apart, right?
Yeah, that's probably very true. That's probably very true because I just want to live in peace and I want other people to live in peace. You know, I mean, life is hard enough as it is. And so why not take the effort to love on the people that are immediately with you? What bothers them and doesn't bother them, not for manipulation or button pushing later, but just so that you can love on somebody properly and, you know, and really care about them. If you tell me you don't like a Snickers and I'm like, "Oh, I thought about you at the store today and I brought you a Snickers." That's not me paying attention to somebody, you know, and that's not any kind of relationship. And that's not, you shouldn't be accepting like the bare bones and just looking at it like, oh, well, they thought about me at the store. We should really aim to have true relationships with each other.
And what does that mean to you, like a true relationship? Like, if I look back, it's just like, where were those true relationships?
I think it's just able to hold space for yourself and hold space for the other person,
Yeah.
you know, to allow that person to grow. And, you know, that partially got me in trouble with the abuse because I would allow, like, granted, the boundary should have been no abuse, right? And then be done. But I allowed this space because I've been in recovery. I've got complex post traumatic stress disorder. I know how hard it is to go through things alone. And I did not want that to happen for my person, you know? And
Mhm.
so I had the empathy and the forgiveness, and I allowed the space for them to grow and to learn and to heal and to just
Mhm.
become, you know. And so I would actually constantly be giving accolades, you know, maybe when I shouldn't have been, I guess, but that's just how my heart is. I can't change that. And
Yeah.
I don't want to become some bitter person. I want everybody to see the beauty of themselves. And I'm going to do that. You know, that's just who I am. I think that's what true relationship is just organically things, nothing forced, nothing where you're like a leech on somebody or vice versa, or
Mhm.
like you have to change or you have to be this or you. Why are you with me then if I have to if I'm not this person, if you don't have respect for who I am or all of the hard work that I've done for healing in myself and recovery to get to this point of my life, then why do you want to be with me? Some of us don't have that choice. You know, you can't divorce like your parents or your kids. You can have your no contact, but at the end of the
Mhm.
day, like that hole is there too, you know? And so we just have to we have to love each other, man.
Yeah. But even in the middle of it, like the way you were describing it, it's like when you're in these abusive relationships and abuse cycles, there's a
Yeah.
comfort in them. It's like it's the devil I know versus loneliness, and there's a whole
Yeah.
thing. And what I find with narcissistic relationships, it's like you meet them and your self-esteem is a certain level, right? And then you meet
Yeah.
them and they blow you up, right? They make you feel like you're on top,
Right.
only so they can go through these abuse cycles, and they are abuse cycles. It's the love
Right.
bomb, the dopamine, the cortisol, dopamine, cortisol, dopamine, cortisol, and they actually make you believe that you deserve whatever it is that you got.
Happen.
These
Yeah.
relationships have a tendency to end when they push you back further than your core is, right? Your core love you hit bottom on whatever that core love is. And they're
Hmm.
like, no, we're gonna drop it lower. And that little zone there, it's called going supernova. It's just like when no, as hard as leaving a toxic relationship is, when
Yeah.
leaving the relationship is less painful than the thought of staying in there, those relationships end. They
Yeah.
cannot go forward because the way they kept us going was just like, oh man, loneliness, loneliness, loneliness. And at some point, it's just like, I'll take the
Yeah.
loneliness. Totally changes. And the way what
Well,
I'm hearing
and
you talk about is just like you started to strip away all those layers. And what you
yeah.
found right down at the core is just that core center of love that just kind of radiates outwards. And I think that's kind of like
Yeah.
the source of your videos and the source of just that
Yeah.
love
You know,
message.
that makes sense. I mean, I'm somebody who loves people. So if I can't love you or you won't let me love you, I hate seeing people in places that are just unhealthy for themselves in their lives,
Mhm.
and that they're, like, I can foresee, like, okay, where this is going to end up. And I don't want that for you, even if you have been horrible to me. That's just not my MO. That's not who I am. So, it's like, I am going to try to help you, but only to a certain extent, because I'm not going to lose my life by the hands of myself or by anybody else. So if I have to get to the place of, like you said, like going below my core, that's
Mhm.
where I definitely would have completely lost myself, and I probably would have done something harmful, or something to get me in trouble, because like now I've lost hope for certain things, but I've lost me. And so then it's like, well, now what matters?
Well,
And
here's the thing, and it's like, and I help people through like really toxic places and deal with them when they're in the worst parts of their life. And what I
yeah,
find with absolutely everyone, I haven't found a single exception to the rule, but there's a part of us that's unbreakable. There's a part of us that cannot be destroyed. There's a part of us that when that abuse hits a certain level, that's where the line gets drawn and no more.
right,
And we
right,
might heal and might take back the abuser and might do all of those other things, but we start to climb back up.
yeah,
And there's the whole concept, post-traumatic growth. It's just like,
oh,
yes, like if you can love
right.
yourself enough to be with your own worst thoughts at your own worst times and your own worst triggers again and again and again, what kind of strength and resilience can you have? And then
That's
afterwards,
such good perception.
yeah, and you do rise up above it. And then once
Yeah,
we absorb all our information, that's why I have all those colored backgrounds. It's just like our emotions are constantly flowing.
yes,
And then it
yes,
almost becomes like a river. And, when you've been abused, like the emotions tend to feel more like waves after a while. And
yeah,
the thing, here's an analogy with waves. It's just like, yes, I can be at the surface and try to
yeah,
knock all my triggers, all these triggers, or
yeah.
I could just kind of sink below the surface because there's no waves below the surface, right?
That's a good, yeah, because I've always thought of, like, when these things come as like ride the wave, right? So I'm like, all right, just ride the wave, but I like that of thinking of it to like sink below the surface of it, because that's like the same place that you're at when you're doing meditation and, things of that nature, and just kind of letting the things kind of come by. And in that way, it's easier to process than riding the wave, so to say.
Yeah. And here's the other thing about sinking below the surface is that's where the currents are. And your core is like, what's my reason for being? I need to heal myself in order to stop this abuse at this level. Like it's going to stop here and no more. It's not going on to the next generation. And I'm sure if we look
No,
back at
right.
our own family trauma, like it's probably gone back, thousands of
Oh,
years.
years upon, yeah, I could talk about that forever. There's just a lot of different patterns, things, ways, stressors, and all of that stuff, like that play into a lot of that. When we just sweep it all under the rug and pretend like none of these things ever happened, or that it wasn't abuse, or that it was discipline, or, and we're not actually addressing it, then we're not going to be able to break those cycles until we can actually take an honest look at it and say, hey, like, this wasn't okay. Like, yeah, you did it. Maybe you didn't mean to, or you didn't know how to deal with what was happening at the moment, whatever the case may be, but it doesn't make it okay.
Mhm,
You know what I'm saying? And that's what I think that we need, is the honesty and the transparency and the
mhm,
space to learn about one another, and to not desire to hurt each other, but to love each other and care and
mhm.
nurture each other.
Well, it's like when you find have those two forces, you've got the your saboteur and you got your sage, and when you bring them
Mm-hmm.
together, it's just like saboteurs really lose their power, they lose their strength.
Yeah.
Narcissists, they need a reaction.
As much as they want us to just be props, right? To just do and be and feel and say everything that they want us to have a pulse,
Well, they
right?
actually want us to. You want to know how to destroy a relationship is be too agreeable. Because if there isn't that friction, there isn't that conflict. If they don't get their
Their
hit,
way. Yeah.
then they're going to lose interest in you. And then if you give in to them, and that's the paradox of it, it's just like it's a lose-lose
Yeah,
situation.
it is.
The paradox is if I become such a big people pleaser that I just cater to everything you need, I'm going to give up my, relationship with my kid. I'm going to quit my job and do everything. I'm going to baby you. I'm going to become your baby mama, and I'm going to take care of
Yeah.
you and take care of you. They're going to be like, what kind of loser does that? I need somebody
Yeah.
who's like what? And then if you fight them too hard, it's just like then they're
There's
going to
no
lose you
way.
too because it's just like
There's
you're
no way for you to survive.
That's right. That's right. There is no way to survive
No.
inside the relationship, but outside the relationship, we can. And if
Yeah.
you need support with that, please reach out to me at narcovery.com. Follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, even. If you're just looking for just love and support from Surya, check out her messages. They're really inspiring. Surya Nycole, Nycole. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And the kisses.
And the kisses. Mwah.
Yeah. I'm gonna put that one in my pocket for later.
Yeah, put it in there. It's like a hug, you know?
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I had to use it.
Yeah.
Bye.